Isn't it pretty cool how sometimes the simplest fixes, turn out to be the best ones?
Yeah, totally.
So today on a deep dive, we're going to look at a couple of really um, clever training aids, stuff that uses everyday items to kind of get over some common fitness hurdles.
Uh-huh.
Get ready for some, like, oh, why didn't I think of that
Oh,
moments?
yeah.
Digging into how these things were made and used straight from the sources we looked at.
Absolutely. And our goal today is really to, get under the hood of these things, figure out the problems they're supposed to solve, how they actually work, and why the sources say they're so effective.
Right.
And what really jumps out is how, like, cheap and easy to get they are. We're not talking fancy, expensive tech here.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kick things off with something that feels almost impossible when you're starting out, the pull-up.
Yeah.
Getting that first unassisted one, wow, that can feel huge.
It really can.
Now, the sources mentioned that initially a big solution people liked was the Stairmaster Gravitron.
Yeah, the Gravitron, for anyone who hasn't seen one, it's basically a machine that helps you out with pull-ups, kind of offset some of your body weight.
So it lets beginners actually do the movement, start building up that strength.
Exactly. It gives you that leg up.
Right, and the sources say, yeah, it's useful for getting started. But then they hit you with some pretty big downsides. First one, the cost.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking nearly $3,000, right? Once you factor in shipping.
Yeah, close to $3,000. The source makes this great comparison, like, imagine buying a top-end Eleiko weight set as your very first set of weights.
It's not realistic for most folks.
Exactly. That price tag is a huge barrier. It just, immediately limits who can even use that kind of help for training. If you want pull-ups to be something more people can do.
Then a super expensive machine kind of works against that.
Right. And the key thing here is good training doesn't always need pricey gear.
And the other thing is just, where can you even use it?
Yeah.
The source puts it really simply. It's about as portable as your kitchen fridge.
Ha!
That's a good way to put it.
So if you're working out somewhere else, like at the track or just a different gym, and pull-ups are on the plan, well, too bad.
Precisely. That complete lack of portability is a major drawback. It really restricts where you can actually train assisted pull-ups effectively.
Yeah.
If you move around or your gym doesn't have one,
You're stuck.
yeah, it really limits your program.
Okay, so this brings us to the clever fix, the good old rubber band, or TheraBand, as the sources call it.
Uh-huh.
Apparently, someone just grabbed 10 feet of this stuff, medical supply store, like a couple of bucks, tied the ends together, and that's it. Problem solved.
It sounds almost too simple, but yeah, it's surprisingly effective.
Hmm.
And this, super cheap alternative, it tackles both those big problems with the Gravitron head on.
How does it work then, exactly?
So you loop the tied band over the pull-up bar. That gives you 2 loops hanging down. You put your feet in those loops.
And depending on the band, how thick it is, how much it stretches, it gives you maybe 40, 50 pounds of upward help. Just makes the pull-up that much easier.
Wow. And the advantages just stack up, right? I mean, the cost, obviously, tiny fraction.
Pennies compared to the Gravitron?
And like we said, you could just chuck it in your gym bag, use it anywhere there's a bar.
Totally portable. But beyond just cost and portability, the source points out it allows for a more natural line of action.
Ah, interesting. So it feels more like a real pull-up.
Yeah, potentially more biomechanically sound than some machines. Plus, changing the assistance level. Super easy.
Right. You just use a thicker band for more help, thinner for less. And this part I thought was really smart. You can use 2 bands looped over.
Creating 4 stirrups.
And that doubles the assistance. That's incredibly versatile. Why is doubling it so useful, though?
Well, think about someone who's like really far from doing even one unassisted pull-up. That extra help lets them focus purely on the form, engaging the right muscles, without just being completely stuck by their own weight.
Okay, makes sense.
The source actually suggests setting up 2 versions. One band setup where you can maybe manage just 2 pull-ups, and another, maybe the double band one where you can bang out 15 or so.
Ah, so you train different things. Low reps for strong focus, higher reps for endurance and practice.
Exactly. It lets you work at different intensities, build consistently, all aiming towards doing them completely on your own eventually.
So it's a whole strategy, not just a single trick.
Okay.
But safety.
Yeah.
The sources mentioned being careful. Getting into those loops sounds like it could be a bit dodgy.
Yeah, you definitely need to pay attention setting up. The way they recommend is pull the band down low, step one foot in carefully, then the other.
Okay.
But the big warning is be really careful the bands don't slip off your feet if one snaps back.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see that. Could it hit you in the face, eye injury? Not good.
Definitely something to avoid. Extreme caution is key there.
And getting out, just as tricky.
Requires the same focus. They say, bend your knees, bring your feet up towards the bar, then carefully wiggle your feet out while keeping a solid grip on the bar.
Okay.
They even suggest maybe closing your eyes just for that moment as an extra precaution in case a band slips.
Wow.
But look, these safety steps are crucial. The band is simple, it's effective, but you gotta respect it, use good technique. The source does say, though, that with a bit of practice, getting in and out becomes, much easier and safer. You get the hang of it.
Right. Practice makes perfect, or at least safer.
Mm.
Okay, cool. Let's switch gears. Let's talk squats. Another really fundamental movement.
Absolutely.
And the sources point out this critical issue that pops up all the time. Heels lifting off the ground. Why is that such a big deal? Why do the heels have to stay down?
Okay, so keeping full heel contact, it's like non-negotiable for building proper, fully functional hip capacity. It's fundamental.
Functional hip capacity.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
It means using your hips powerfully and through their full range. When your heels lift, it just throws everything off. Your whole kinetic chain, ankle, knee, hip, core, it gets disrupted. Your balance shifts forward.
Okay.
And maybe most importantly, it massively reduces how much your glutes, your hamstrings, your hip extensors are actually working. And those are the muscles that should be driving the squat.
So lifting the heels makes the squat way less effective and messes up your overall athletic ability.
Exactly. Less power, less stability, bad news for athletes, or really anyone wanting to move well.
Yeah, the sources list a bunch of reasons this might happen, right? Tight hamstrings, maybe weak glutes or hips, not knowing how to fire those muscles properly.
Yeah.
Could even just be bad habits or coordination issues.
Yeah, lots of potential causes.
But bottom line, whatever the reason, heels got to stay planted.
That's the message. No matter why it's happening, a heel lift weakens the squat, makes it less safe. And that's where this second clever little invention comes in, the heel lift detector.
And this thing sounds even simpler, materials-wise, like a wooden dowel, maybe 4 feet long, some nylon cord, a bit of thin sheet metal.
That's basically it. A 114-inch dowel, 48 inches long, 10 feet of 18-inch nylon cord, and a small sheet of steel, maybe 6 by 24 inches, pretty thin, like 116th of an inch.
And the cost? Like next to nothing?
Source says under $7 for everything at a local hardware store.
Amazing. So how do you put this together?
Super straightforward. You cut the steel sheet in half, so you have 2 pieces, maybe 6 by 12 inches. Drill a hole near one of the narrow edges on each piece.
Okay.
Then drill holes through the dowel, maybe about 16 inches in from each end. And then you just use the cord about 5 feet per side to tie each steel sheet to the dowel through those holes.
Huh. And the source said, what, less than an hour to make it, including buying the stuff?
Yeah, pretty quick DIY project.
So how does this contraption actually tell you if your heels are lifting? It sounds so basic.
It's genius in its simplicity. You place the narrow edge of each steel sheet just under the squatter's heels, maybe about 3.5 inches under.
Right under the back of the heel.
Exactly. Then the coach, or whoever's spotting, just gently holds the ends of the dowel and pulls outward slightly with their index fingers. Just a light, steady pull.
Okay.
Now here's the magic. If the person squatting lifts their heels even for a split second,
The steel sheets lose that downward pressure.
bingo, they lose their base. And that gentle outward pull is enough to make them just slide right out from under the heels. Instant feedback.
Wow. That is clever. And you can adjust how sensitive it is.
Yeah, that's another neat part. The coach can vary that outward pull. Pull a tiny bit harder, and it might slip out just from a slight weight shift toward the ball of the foot before the heel actually lifts.
So you can really fine-tune it.
Or pull more gently, and it'll only slide out if there's a clear, definite heel lift. So it becomes this really precise tool for feedback.
Yeah, immediate physical feedback. You can't really ignore it.
Totally. The source even tells the story about people who were flagrant violators, always lifting their heels. And the second this thing was put under their feet, boom, instant correction. It just forces that awareness, that focus on keeping the weight back, shows the power of that immediate tactile cue for learning movement.
It's not just someone telling you, it's something happening the moment you mess up,
Yep.
like a physical reminder.
Exactly. And the source also mentions it's especially good when used with the overhead squat.
Why the overhead squat specifically?
Well, the overhead squat already demands way more stability and control through the whole body, especially the core and shoulders, compared to a regular back squat.
Right, it's much harder to balance.
So adding the heel lift detector in that context just really, really emphasizes how vital that heel contact is for maintaining balance, stability, proper form, basically for nailing those essential athletic mechanics.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So wrapping things up here, we've really dug into two quite resourceful fixes for common fitness roadblocks.
Yeah, definitely.
First, that simple rubber band, turning the pull-up from something scary into something you can actually work on progressively.
Uh-huh. Making it accessible.
And then this hardware store special, the heel lift detector. Just a few basic bits, creating this incredibly effective tool for dialing in squat form.
Yeah, both are just great examples of, ingenuity, finding simple ways around training hurdles. But they also really point back to how important it is to understand the mechanics of movement.
Like what a good pull-up is, or why that stable foot position in the squat matters so much.
Exactly. It's about understanding the why behind the how.
You know, this whole deep dive really gets you thinking, doesn't it? Like, how often do we look for really complicated or, expensive answers when maybe a simpler, more accessible fix is sitting right there? It makes you wonder what other, tough training challenges or, heck, challenges in other parts of life might have their own version of a TheraBand or heel lift detector just waiting to be figured out.
That's a great question.
Maybe worth asking ourselves sometimes, what's the simple, creative solution I might be overlooking here?